at a local church here in Kansas City, actually in Belton, Missouri. And I'm doing some upgrades, and I'm actually waiting on the monitor console to arrive. So I thought I'd show you guys around and let you see what I'm doing. And you can go ahead and pop your questions down in the chat box as we're going. So today I'm going to be showing you how I'm setting up live vocal tuning, setting up the broadcast setup from front of house console. So I've got a little method I do for that. I'll give you a little sneak peek into that. And then we're also setting up wireless in-ear monitors for the singers. But all of that is actually dependent on the monitor console coming, because we don't want to have monitor wedges and vocal tuning at the same time. And FedEx was supposed to deliver yesterday, and it still has not arrived. So I'm going to show you guys around while I wait. So here we go. If you're new here, you can go ahead and hit subscribe and ding the little bell to get notified every time I post a new video or go live like this. What's up, Israel? Good to see you, man. Glad you're here. So you can follow along with me. I'm going to be showing you the computer, the setup of how I've got the I/O going to and from the computer for the X32. And then I'm also preserving how we can do virtual sound check as well. And then maybe I'll show you a little bit of my broadcast mixing setup from front of house. Because the goal of the church here is to set up an online campus. They're, you know, I'll just put it nicely, but vocals just sound bad when they're not in tune, and it's not the singer's fault. It's the stream just really highlights out of tune singing. So little pitch shifts become really, really apparent over a stream. So we're going to help the singers out and hopefully make it a lot better for their online pound. Good to see you. Hey, we are so glad that you guys are here and chatting with me. Go ahead and say hi in the chat box. Love talking to you guys. Love hearing from you. I made the mistake of holding a gimbal in my arm, and my arm is already really tired. So hopefully I'll be able to switch the camera around, you know, mid live stream and show you guys and rest my arm a little bit, or at least switch. I did test my audio before I started, which, you know, pat myself on the back for that one. And so then let's jump in. The first thing I think you guys are probably going to want to see is how I've got the vocal tuning set up. And now, if you're a really technical nerd and really want to get like persnickety with me, you might get angry because I'm actually going out of the console analog into an audio interface and then back out of the audio interface into a couple more channels. So I mean, it's nothing really cool to look at, but we can see back here, I've got XLR cables, and half of them are going to, oh, shit. Here we go. Half of them are going to the interface. Let me flip the camera around. Can I flip the camera around live? Yes, here we go. Okay. Let's save my arm from being in selfie mode the whole time. So from the back of the console, we're going into this PreSonus interface. And lovely low lighting, but you can see I've got XLR going, you know, I've got the inputs going in and the outputs coming back out. So that's pretty simple. And then over here on the computer, I've got Live Professor 2. And this program is meant for just running plugins live as inserts. So I don't have to worry about recording or, you know, hardware going on, or like, you know, the recording stuff maybe could mess up my CPU and get that back. So that could be a problem, but we're trying to isolate that. And the other thing about Live Professor 2 that I like a lot is here's all my channels, here's all my plugins, but I've got snapshots, global snapshots for each of the plugins, you know, for everything. They're down here. I've got the global snapshots, and I've set these up to change key on all the Waves Tune real-time plugins at the same time. So right now you can see we're in C major. If I want to go to D major, I double-click this. Everybody goes to D. So, you know, even if I select vocal 3 over here, it's gone to D as well. We can go to B flat if we want. Everybody goes to B flat at the same time. So the global scenes are really, really helpful because we're trying to keep things simple for our volunteers. The other cool thing is that we can set up a cue list. So making it even simpler, we can delete all these real quick so I can show you guys. So we can create a new cue based on a global preset. We can call this song 1. I got caps lock on, so don't judge me. And we can say song 1 is in C major. Can make another one, rename it Jesus Loves Me, and we can sing that one in E flat. So now, when we're on song 1, we can go ahead and load this cue, and then go ahead and hit go next, and everything is automatically updating, and now this should switch to E flat when I hit go next. So that is really, really cool. So super, super fun way to do that. There's some DAWs that can do this with the cue lists and the scenes, but they were much more expensive. I think this was 99 euros, so about 120 bucks US. And so this was really the selling point for using Live Professor 2 for me. So I just wanted to make this easy. The sound tech will take the cue list from Planning Center. It'll have the song titles and the keys on there. Even if there's a key change, they can note that and go from one to the next. All they have to hit is go next while they're mixing. And then there's also a bypass global snapshot that bypasses all of the plugins at once. If you get in a panic, if you don't know what key we're in, there's that too. Now over on the console, I'll show you, I set up a failsafe as well. So, we've got all our band inputs over here. We've got our vocals here. The vocals that are going to go to the monitors and the preamps actually are over here on this channel. And these are where things are coming from. And they're also our safety, our backup. The vocal tuning return is actually coming up over here on these channels. So if they get in a pinch, say the computer totally crashes, everything dies, they can mute these, shove their hand down on there, unmute that, shove it up, and they're good to go with a direct signal, no computer involved. If the computer totally crashes, they're still good to go, and they don't have any issues there. So there's how that works. So that's pretty fun. Now the next thing that I could show you on the console is the way that I have my multi-bus setup for broadcast mixing. And I'm planning on doing a webinar on this, more detailed in the future. But for now, I'll give you guys the broad overview of what's going on here. So we've got all of our channels, right? And they're routed to the stereo bus. That's normal. Y'all get that, right? But for the broadcast mix, I want to compress my different inputs in groups. See if I can get this to actually show up. You can't really see the labels on there, I apologize. I want to compress my inputs in groups to go to the stream. So I've got my drums grouped together, I've got my instruments grouped together, I've got my vocals grouped together. I've got a crowd mic bus because I didn't want the compression of the other channels to affect that. I want to have an independent control of that. And then also I've got a speaking bus as well. So this is all our speaking mics. And this is one of the ways that you can use to get another gain stage to boost up the level of your speaking mics so that it's louder than your band relative to what it is here in the room. Because, we're not in a giant room, but there's going to be a pretty big difference of level between what goes on, in here. Probably going to be 85 dB and up for the music part, and it's probably going to be more in the 75 dB part or levels for the speaking. So this gives us another gain stage that we can turn this up. And then all these buses, bus 1 through 8 and actually bus 9 are all routed to the streaming bus. The streaming bus itself has more compression on it. And again, I will show you guys the details of all that when it comes time for that webinar. You'll want to check that out so that you can, have that in your, you can be on the lookout for that. I'll be posting more stuff about it, and I'll be sharing more about it in the days to come. because I think you guys will really benefit from that if you're trying to run front of house and broadcast at the same time. So that's the basic setup for how I got broadcast set up. I've got my vocal tuning set up. Now, let me go show you where we hung the crowd mics, because that's kind of fun. And those are a new addition as well. We got the Deity S Mic 2 shotgun mics. You can use 57s on the front of the stage if you want, but if you're gonna, if you're gonna go all out, you might as well do it right. Let me switch this around again and pan up into the ceiling. You can not really see those very well. Let me see if I can get a different angle. Black on black, right? That's the way tech stuff goes. So you can see up there beside the speaker, we've got the shotgun mic, and you might think, oh, that's really close to the speaker. It is close to the speaker, but the shotgun mics are very directional. So it does pick up speaker noise, I'm not gonna lie about that, but it does a good job of rejecting it compared to the noise coming in to the front of the crowd. So Tim and Jordan here at LifeQuest Church in Belton got those set up. And so I'm really pleased with it. The cables go, through the ceiling and then over here to the S16s over here. So they came in this way, and that's where they show up over here. I'm really appreciative of them setting that up. One more thing that we did on this little install is I went ahead and turned down the gain on the power amps for the mains. So these were up, maybe 10 dB hotter, because what was happening, flip this around again, if I can, there we go. So what was happening is on the DCAs for almost every channel, the drums, the instruments, the vocals, all of them were brought down to like -10. So there was a good healthy gain at the preamp, but for the VCAs to be pulled down that much to get to keep things from being too loud at front of house, that was just kind of like, oh, this is a symptom of the power amp being too loud. So I'm going to dial that back just a little bit so that we can use our DCAs, running into a chair, we can use our DCAs in a little bit better way, and they can be closer to 0, so we can get a little bit better fine tuning of our overall groups. That's also going to help us get more level going to our post fader groups on our buses that are feeding our broadcast mix. So that's kind of the short rundown of what's going on. Let me check comments over here. All right. So Abner asks, can you do a video with a full tutorial for adjusting multiple instances of Wave's real tune at the same time? That really depends on your setup. So it is possible to remap MIDI in order to select the key for all those channels. Oops, sorry. So you can select MIDI to do that, although I haven't gone through and done that because I don't have a MIDI device of my own to try that. The way that I like to do it with Live Professor 2 is I just create global snapshots. Now, the weakness of that is that the global snapshots don't allow you to change the vocal range, right? We mostly have tenors, altos, and sopranos in church music. There's not a lot of baritones going on, although there are some, but fewer. So I just left them all on generic. So then the key changes. So I had to go through and change each plugin's key and then make a snapshot, a global snapshot, and then change each plugin's key again and then make a global snapshot. And I like to run here I can show you. The general settings on here are pretty straightforward. I like to turn my speed a little bit slower, right? The default is like 15, but I like it at 30 because I want it to be a little bit slower. And when it's too fast, now I don't think 15 is necessarily too fast. Sorry, gimbal's being weird on me. I don't necessarily think 15 is too fast, but in general with vocal tuning, when you have it slower, it sounds more natural for long notes, right? Long notes are supposed to have a little bit of change in them or they sound unnatural. but that will miss the faster notes. And honestly, people aren't really like bugged as much by the faster notes being a little bit out of tune. But the slower notes, yeah, that's where it starts to clash and you get coursing effect, and it's weird, and you want to avoid that. So 15 and 120 for the note transition is good for me. You can go slower if you've got singers that like to scoop a lot, like a lot. You can go slower on that as well. So that can be helpful for you. Checking out any more questions. Here we go. Let's see. Scrolling through your questions. Okay, Israel asks, are you a volunteer as well, or do you receive income from helping at your church? That is a loaded question. So I do audio stuff on the side. I do teaching through Attaway Audio. I've got my courses, and that's my primary source of income right now. But I also do installs. Like this is an install for the church that is not my home church. So this is close to my house. I love the guys here, but my wife and I go to Christ Triumphant Church in Lee Summit, and I volunteer there once a month on Sundays. So I do stuff, as a, freelancer or mercenary, which I don't love doing because I want to be at church on Sunday and be a regular congregant. And that's why I'm building stuff on the week or during the week so that I can just be a volunteer on Sundays. And that's fun rather than, I'm going to work on a Sunday. It's kind of bothersome to me, and that's been my journey as, being a professional in audio and being a church sound tech. It's hard to balance, and I know there's a lot of guys that are doing that, and it feels that tension. So if you feel that tension, I feel you too. You can hit that thumbs up. Because I don't want to just be a professional. I want to be a Christian that goes to church with his family, and his family sees him going to church, sees me going to church. So there's all that too. And I should have turned off my phone and made it on because I just got a phone call. So that's the story on what I'm doing there. I volunteer, but I also, do freelance stuff on the side. This is a paid gig for me, setting all this stuff up here at LifeQuest. Let's see any other questions. There was a question about latency. And latency can be an issue, but Waves Tune Real Time is pretty low latency. And then the other thing that you'll have to set up, let me show you that if I can launch this, is you have to balance the computer's performance with the amount of latency you get. So here's the universal control for the PreSonus interface. And this is where you can select your block size. I'll zoom in here. So it's at 64, right? We could go more blocks, right? That's how much latency essentially we're going to have. But the fewer blocks we have, the more processing power it's going to take of our computer. So I could put it all the way down to 16, but that might be really taxing on the CPU. I don't know yet because I haven't tested this thoroughly. But 64, I think 64 samples is not going to be all that much latency. And so that's what we're going to deal with, and we're going to start there when we're doing that. All right. So let's see. Scrolling through more of the comments. All right. So, Baudriel Desravines asks, what's your home church that you mix for? Because I'd love to hear your mixing for their live stream. That church is Christ Triumphant Church in Lee's Summit. And I'm still getting their live stream set up, kind of dialed in. I've been doing a lot of other churches. I mixed on the 27th, so the last Sunday of the year. So you can hear that live stream mix. And so we're getting it and all the volunteers dialed in there. So you can check that out if you want. That's full disclosure. That's the real deal. Nothing hidden there. Another church that I set up, but I'm not mixing there anymore, is Redeemer Fellowship in Kansas City. They're Midtown congregation if you want to find them on Facebook. I mixed there for the duration of the lockdown, so for like March to August, I was mixing there, and then set up this same multi-bus setup for them, and they've been running that with their volunteers. So their volunteers are basically just mixing front of house, and all the rest of the mixing is happening through the multi-bus setup. So, you know, their mix is dependent on, you know, what the front of house guy does. Sorry, my gimbal's wigging out on me again. It depends on what their front of house guy is doing. And if they push up the drums enough, because they don't have any drum shields, right? So the drums are really loud in the room, they might not have the drums up enough to really push it through on the mix. So a lot of churches are still getting the whole online thing figured out. And so those are some that you can check out that I've had my hands on, not necessarily running all the time. So let's see. So Gabriel N asks, how much better are digital mixing consoles compared to analog for live mixing? And I would say that that really depends on how much processing power you have outboard. I love digital consoles because there's a compressor and an EQ on every channel, and there's already probably at least 4 effects units and maybe even some more inserts you can do. That's pretty cool. The thing about analog is that one knob is one function. And if you have enough outboard gear to make up for it, like at the International House of Prayer in Kansas City, in their global prayer room, they have a digital console right next to a nice big analog console. And they've got you know, a rack full of outboard gear, so you can compress every single channel that you want to because you have the outboard gear to do it. And the outboard gear is really where the rubber meets the road for the analog console. If you don't have that, then digital has the advantage. If you do have it, then there can be many advantages to the analog console. It's got a certain sound to it, right? When you really push it hard, it kind of pushes back in a pleasing way. And it's fun to have one knob be one function and to be able to work quickly, especially when you have to make complex changes or changes all of a sudden and you're just going for it. So I love analog, don't get me wrong, but digital offers me a whole lot more flexibility. Let's see, mixing in a so that is going to be it for today. You know what? I'm going to go on a rant real quick. So buckle up. Here we go. I might offend you, but that's okay. Church sound techs and just church techs in general have a really hard time with boundaries. And you have to learn to be able to say no to some things. Like if someone asks you to do something and it's outside of what you normally do, whether you're a volunteer or whether you're on staff, right? The temptation is to say yes to be helpful, even if it comes at the expense of something else. So the way to set boundaries and the way to be healthy and not just excel in church audio or church tech for a short term, but for a long term, is to know what you want before anybody asks you to do something, right? So it's the beginning of the year. A lot of people are talking about goals. They're talking about setting yourself up for success for 2021. You have to know what's important to you. Is your family time important? Is your health important? Is your job important if you're a volunteer at church? Is doing stuff outside of church avocationally or as a hobby, is that important to you? You have to know what those things are before you start volunteering, before you start saying yes to really anything, so that you can know where the line is. Because if somebody asks you to do something extra, something else is going to have to pay the price of that time, whether that's your rest time or whether that's the time that you spend with your family. There's this tension in church because there's limited resources, but big vision, in that the technical people have to fill that gap and turn into Rumpelstiltskin and turn, like audio straw into audio gold, or video or lighting or whatever else. There's this expectation that in order to be good at your job, you have to exceed expectations, and sometimes that means putting in lots and lots and lots of extra time. That extra time doesn't always yield what you want, and Just saying yes because someone asked you doesn't always get what's needed, because what's needed might be to ask different questions. So let's imagine somebody asks you to work extra because they've got this vision for another service and it requires a bunch of setup and you didn't have time for it, but now you're trying to make time for it. If you just say yes and you bear that burden, you pay that cost in some way with your time, with your energy, with something else that you're giving up. If you say, hey, I don't want to give up my family time and they're going to have to pay the price if I choose to do this, let's talk about what's really most important about this event or this thing that you want me to do and see if we can find a different way to do it that doesn't require XYZ time. So that can be really helpful too. That's my short rant because I've been thinking about it because it's the beginning of the year. And I know some of you might have gotten run over with Christmas and New Year's or Christmas and Christmas Eve services. And Easter is not that far away. So start making your plan now for how you might say what your boundaries are when it comes time for those Easter services and those extra things. Sometimes it's a great thing to put in the extra hours. I'm not saying you shouldn't work hard, but you should know what you have available to give before you give it. So if you're still watching, what's up, Jordan? Go ahead and hit subscribe and ding the little bell to get notified for more live streams like this. If you have any questions, you can drop them down in the comments below. I try to get back to those pretty regularly. And hopefully we will get the rest of this install finished if the monitor console actually arrives in time to set it up and get it all working with wireless routers and in-ear monitors and all that stuff. Not looking forward to that part because it's IT and I'm really not great at IT. If you're in the Kansas City area and you're good at IT and you want to shadow me, please let me know. All right. So this is me signing off. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, ding the little bell. We'll see you guys next time.